Thank you all for being here. Thanks to all of our community organizations that are at tables all the way around the room here. Let's give them a great big round of applause. Thank you to all of our NGOs. And our California Department of Fish and Wildlife is here. LA Divers is here. We've got a great group of people here that will tell you a lot of interesting information about what's going on in the community. Give them another moment for everyone to come on over. Terrific. Well, thank you all and welcome. My name's Terry Tamminen. I'm the CEO here at Altasea. We've got a terrific team here of staff and volunteers that will tell you much more about Altasea. Everyone who is a volunteer or staff member of Altasea, raise your hand so everyone can see who you are. Come on, Robin, raise your hand. Everybody raise your hand. Yes, thank you. Those blue shirts and even a few people in civilian clothes like me, we're happy to talk about Altasea. This cap is something that you too could proudly own, and I see another wonderful volunteer here wearing the cap. This is an opportunity to be part of Altasea. You can join as a member, and there's great swag that comes with it. Holidays are coming, I'm just saying. But for those of you who may not be familiar with Altasea, let me just tell you briefly, a nonprofit. We're celebrating our 10th year. Hard to believe. Yes, that's worth a little applause. And I especially want to recognize our founder and COO, Jenny Crusoe. Is Jenny here, or did she wander off to take care of something? Where's Jenny? Anyway, she's here. She can hear you. If you give Jenny Crusoe a big round of applause, yes. So she helped form this thing 10 years ago as a nonprofit to take over this 35-acre campus here that was originally City Dock #1, the first place where there was commerce in the Port of Los Angeles. These warehouses you're in were built 110 years ago to take cargo from the Panama Canal, used by the Navy in World War I and II, then of course for a lot of cargo that came through here. But then containerization came along and nobody needed warehouses anymore. And so the port and the Annenberg Foundation, Jenny and many others came together and said, we need something where we can house the blue economy because that's going to be the next big thing. And so Altasea was born to take over this facility to raise tens of millions of dollars from many of you, thank you, and from the port and from the city and the state that allowed us to renovate this, put in these beautiful translucent doors, the glass doors on this side, so all of our tenants who are going to start moving in now after the renovation's done here will have their own entrances, modern bathrooms and plumbing and so forth, and lighting, and cleaned up this beautiful 110-year-old infrastructure. And we put 2 megawatts of solar on the roof, so all of the energy being used today is solar powered, and we're sending more back to the community. And so we're here to create and build and support the blue economy, which to us means aquaculture, both on land and at sea, really amazing innovations, some of which you can see in the art installation right behind us. I encourage you to go through that if you haven't. Things like kelp, growing it to extract food and fuel and medicines, just amazing things that our researchers are discovering, and then our companies, that some of which you'll hear from today, are turning out as products and services. We also focus on renewable energy, wave and tidal energy. We have companies here that are starting to harness the abundant clean energy of the ocean with wave and tidal energy. We also work on ocean carbon dioxide removal. Many of you may have heard about science that's trying to pull carbon dioxide back out of the atmosphere, that pollution we put up there that causes global warming, trying to take it out of the atmosphere, which works, but it's very energy intensive and hard to do. But when you take it out of seawater, you can use a different process that's less energy intensive and less expensive. And the byproduct, at least in one case, is hydrogen, which we're going to talk about today, and all the benefits to the maritime economy of hydrogen and decarbonizing and cleaning up the air with clean hydrogen. And then we also work on blue technology, underwater robotics, mapping, sensors. Bob Ballard, who found the Titanic, has a workshop here for his underwater drones and robots and so forth. And we work with underwater construction companies that use robots. Really amazing technology. Anything to do with the ocean economy, that we can use the ocean sustainably. And that is the blue economy, and that's what we're here for, to train the workforce, to educate the next generation, to provide a place for researchers to create these new technologies, and then most importantly, put companies in all of these warehouses that will build their prototypes and take them to commercial scale and really create that blue economy for California and the world. So that's what we do. And very important to that mission are our partners, many of which are here today. And of course, the City of Los Angeles, and no better partner than the Port of Los Angeles, represented today by Commissioner Lee Williams. Right there, Lee, raise your hand. I don't think any of your colleagues are here today, are they? No, okay, so great. We've got a great representative from the port. If you have any questions about port activities, he'll be happy to answer. And we're also, of course, very proud and would not be here today without our board of directors. Our chair, Geraldine Natz, I think may have got stuck in traffic, but okay. And by the way, remember that Jenny Crusoe I mentioned? Now she's standing right at the back there. Raise your hand, Jenny, yes. She can tell you literally where all the bodies are buried here. So feel free to ask any questions of her. And Cindy Alvitre, who normally does an opening blessing recognizing that we are on the unceded lands of the Tongva, Gabrielino, and Chumash people. Is she here? She may also be stuck in traffic, so we may hear from her later, but we do recognize that we are on these ancestral lands of people that are still here. You know, we often think of Native Americans as being something that don't exist anymore, that Europeans came over here and very sadly drove out of their lands and decimated, but they're still very much here, and we still learn very much from their culture about sustainability and about living in harmony with nature right here on the ocean. I also want to mention, before we get the program started, I did mention this wonderful cap and all the other swag that you can get as holiday gifts, but importantly, a couple weeks ago on a Saturday, many of you were here for our Blue Hour fundraiser, and where we kicked off an online auction of some really amazing prizes and gifts and travel and food opportunities. That auction closes today at noon. So I'll just tell you that it was so much excitement about that I was bidding for one of the items, and somebody kept bidding another $50, and I kept bidding another $50. It turned out I was bidding against my wife and didn't know it. So we may end up with that particular item, although I think she's going to go online at 11:59 and just put in the last bid. But anyway, check your phones, and if you have any questions about it, Robin's back there. She'll answer them. Anyone else from Altasea will do that. But please consider bidding. It'll all go to a great cause, our education and workforce training programs. At this time, and again, just before we start our full program, I'd like to invite Sergeant Floge from LAPD Divers to come on up on the stage. Jenny, you want to join me? Jenny, yep, come on up.
Thanks, Terry. Hi, my name is Paul Floge from the LAPD Maritime Operations Team. This is one of my officers, Officer Brian Putnam. We just wanted to thank Altasea. For many of you that probably don't know, we were kind of homeless with our boats for a while, and Altasea has been very kind and let us dock our boats in their space. So they've been a great partner to us, and we really appreciate it. So we got a plaque for them. Just a small token of appreciation. It says, in appreciation, Altasea, in recognition of your unwavering support of the Maritime Operations Team, as we work together for common goals, teamwork is what will make us all succeed in our future endeavors. Your hospitality and support is greatly appreciated. There's a quote on here. It says, if everyone is moving forward together, then success takes care of itself. The Los Angeles Police Department Maritime Operations Team. Thank you very much.
Hey.
That's lovely.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Give them a great big round of applause for their service, their dedication, and a great exhibit back there. I think you'll learn a lot. I did when I spent some time with them a couple of months ago. And speaking of underwater robots, they'll tell you about how that becomes a bigger and more important part of their work, to be able to go into hazardous zones where the water might be murky and try to get a robot to go in there first. So that's another area where that kind of technology is going to be really important. Well, let's get into the exciting discussion about hydrogen. Hydrogen, as you may know, is the most abundant element in the universe, and it's the smallest molecule known, so it's a little hard to work with in some ways. But hydrogen is really an important piece of our clean energy and sustainability future. And hydrogen on Earth, most of it is bound up in fossil fuels or in water H2O, the H2 being hydrogen, right? And so we're trying to get a lot of green hydrogen these days. Instead of taking it from fossil fuels, we want to try to get it from things like water. So how do you break the hydrogen out of the H2O? You use a little bit of electricity. And you might say, well, okay, right now we're trying to transition our grid to renewables, and that's a challenge. And water is a big challenge. I mean, especially in California, where are we going to get all the water if we were going to make hydrogen, lots of hydrogen from water and electricity? Well, think about this. There's enough hydrogen in a gallon of water that if you took it out, you'd have enough energy to power your car the same distance it goes on a gallon of gasoline. So if you think a gallon of water equals a gallon of gasoline in terms of the energy potential, there's enough water from the sewage treatment plants in Los Angeles that we throw away into the Pacific Ocean every day, that if you took the hydrogen out of that water, you could power the entire United States transportation fleet. Now, of course, you wouldn't do that from any one sewage treatment plant, but it shows you that every city with a sewage treatment plant that's dumping the water after spending money to treat it could actually be turning some of that water into hydrogen and putting it in our vehicles or using it to power the grid. And you might say, okay, well, then where are we going to get all that electricity? Because again, we need the renewables for transitioning to the cleaner grid and powering our, putting power into our Teslas and all that sort of thing. Yes. But it turns out that we actually curtail or waste a certain amount of our renewables every day because we've built so much. So wind, for example, we've built so much wind power that, and a lot of it blows at night, that we can't use it all. So in California, we actually export that to other states at night and we pay them to take it. Or if they can't take it because there's not enough demand, we literally zap it into the ground. And the same thing now with solar. We've built so much solar that because it peaks at a certain time of day, and yes, that's when everyone's got their air conditioners on and so forth, we use that solar, but it turns out that now at certain times of day, there's too much solar and we curtail that. We could use that excess renewable energy and that wastewater to make hydrogen for the kinds of things you're going to hear about today. So hydrogen, I think, is a big part of our green and blue future. And one example of that is this gentleman that I want to introduce now, Takehito Yokoo, who was formerly an executive with Toyota Motor North American, powertrain chief engineer, and a senior executive of the Advanced Fuel Cell Division, who built the first fuel cell heavy-duty trucks. All these big 18-wheelers that you see, he built the first one to run on a hydrogen fuel cell, and it had over 20,000 zero-emission miles in its demonstration. So it proved the concept. Tak is also the founder and chair of the Japan Hydrogen Forum, and he leads numerous hydrogen business companies. And he's got an amazing technology that he's built with his own hands that he's going to talk about today. So let's hear Tak Yokoo.
Thank you very much, Terry, for the great introduction. Today we're talking about hydrogen, so this is the day that I like anyway. And I'm really amazed that when I joined, start some way interact with this organization, Altasea, when I was in the Japan Hydrogen Forum chairperson. I'm really, really impressed that this is the place we need and really we have to promote, because nature is the one can help us. Nature is the one that can help us, and we have to really help nature. And that's really the center of the organization here that Terry was leading, and Jen also. Thank you so much. And let me talk about the hydrogen today. The large company does large things, Then after I retired Toyota, and now I'm just one myself, but I still want to continue something I want to do, so that I start talking about looking at a small area, which still really, really important. So let me, my presentation. Okay, so again, my name is Takehito Yokoo, and I'm CEO of Jozen Power LLC, and I work for Toyota, basically too many years. And my area was alternate powertrain, such as Prius hybrid, and lab for EV, and plug-in Prius, and fuel cell Mirai. And as Terry was mentioning, the last few years, I was working on the heavy-duty truck hydrogen fuel cell powertrain application. And today's CO2 level, let me talk about this first. We always want to keep our mind that everyday CO2 level, I hope. The CO2 monitor on my table always threatens me every morning, scares me, that our CO2 level today, it's a 40%, much more than known 800,000 years of this planet history. And this is exactly aligned with my life, so I'm part of responsible. And really, we need to work on this CO2 reduction. And in the meanwhile, also under this planet, really, Earth is also working very hard. That's what I'm talking about. This Altasea activity is so important that recently, the 2016, the pet bottle eating bacteria was found in Osaka, Japan, in one of the recycle centers. And also sunflowers are working very hard removing the radioactive cesium in the Fukushima prefecture in Japan. And some study recently found that restoring fish and bison and gray whales in certain area really reduced the huge amount of CO2. Like in some cases, 500 gigatons CO2 was reduced, caused by rewilding. So basically, there's no time for this planet Earth to blame people, but working very hard. So why not we shake hands with the nature and work together to help habitable our planet? And as I mentioned, the planet does large-scale CO2 reduction, such as ocean and forest, but at the same time, small things like the bacteria. Why not we do the large things and small things together? So large company does large things. Small company does small things. So let's see. Last 2020, I'm sorry, this is before that, I need to tell about this. So my focus point was food cart and backyard grill. Those areas who does use the propane cylinder a lot. And how a lot cylinder? This one correct, yes. In 2020, the over 40 million 20-pound propane gas cylinder was sold in the US, and that exhausts about 54 kilotons of CO2, which is 12,000 vehicle equivalent exhaust CO2. Worldwide, 960 million tons of CO2 coming from basically the entire sold propane cylinders, and which is almost exactly the same as 2/3 of entire US car exhaust CO2. So this is even small area, but significant. So what I'm start working is zero carbon footprint, 100% renewable sushi wagon. There are no surprising new technologies, but putting together in the existing technology to make things work and tell people that this is something we can start look at, reducing the CO2 also in small scale application. So during the daytime, the solar panel on the roof generates electricity for sushi refrigeration and rice cooker and necessary equipment load. Then additionally, it powered hydrogen generation. And hydrogen generator will create the hydrogen during the daytime and keep it in the tank. And when nighttime, there's no solar system power available. Then now the hydrogen from the tank will go to the fuel cell. And the fuel cell continue to provide the power to sushi wagon. So it's a self-sustainable and renewable and clean energy food cart. Let's see, yep. So basically, I started this idea almost 1 year ago. And as soon as I kind of share this idea with today, I think we have this, with Alex Spatel, the name here, I don't know, the CEO of Adept Group, he's sitting right here. And he kindly immediately say that let's form the group and with the UCLA School of Engineering team. So with this team, I start working on this sushi wagon. And this is kind of original idea, really hands-on, and the original idea was made by this team and myself, work together and one by one. So let me share some idea, some slide. So none of them can be done by myself alone, and I want to recognize the people who help really me and expert of this area. So Alex Patel, CEO and founder of the Adept Group, he's sitting here. Maybe give him some hand. Then his team of UCLA engineering graduate, Alex Murto, I think he cannot come here today, and Blake Hanson, he may not be here either. And Liam Harry, he is going to present after me. And also recognize that Arnie Reed, who is the Arnie Reed Consulting and really also part of the Alex Group and supporter, and Bobby Berger, he is manager of Toyota Motor North American headquarters. And they are the really strong helper, they make it happen. So this is the actual of the world first, I would say world first after I Google, and there's no such a thing. So world first hydrogen sushi wagon. And this comes with a 400-watt solar power, 260 cc per minute electric hydrogen, 100 psi hydrogen creation, and 200-watt fuel cell power, and 38-liter hydrogen tank. So the key point is really those existing technology, existing component can fit in this practically and the correct carbon footprint. So that means giving me really great opportunity that in the future, there will be a zero emission carbon food possible. Many applications could be possible. That really, I like to believe that there will be no more propane gas and no more diesel engine, no more small engine generation with a food carbon. And there are lots of those things in the corner of everywhere. So with this, last picture is Terry mentioned. 2 weeks ago when we did in Brew Hours here, this sushi food cart was served reception. And really we have made people enjoy with actual sushi, collaboration with the great seafood company called Seatopia. So with this, let me show the 30-second last video, then I like to finish my presentation.
World first hydrogen sushi wagon.
Solar power during the day. Hydrogen power during the night.
Zero carbon footprint. Sustainable, renewable energy.
Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Arigatou gozaimasu. Give him another great big round of applause. A great innovator and inventor. And I can't tell you how important this really is because Jenny and I were in New York a couple of weeks ago. Every corner has a food cart and every one of them has a little Honda generator spewing fumes to power it. There's just so many of these you wouldn't even think about it, but it goes beyond that. As the world gets hotter and more people move into the middle class and want to have cooling and air conditioning or even just power in developing countries where they may not have the grid access, what do? They go out and buy little generators. So this has application far beyond just food carts and food wagons, but you've got to start somewhere, and I think having a hydrogen-powered sushi cart is a great place to do it, to demonstrate it, to get people thinking about it. And when Tak first brought this here, all of that technology was in a wagon almost the size of the sushi cart sitting next to it. And he was proving the concept, and then he miniaturized it and got it all put into the cart itself. So really a true innovator and really something that this world is going to need, because we all focus, as he said, on the big things, on how do we turn the whole grid green? How do we get shipping and aviation and everything else to use green fuels? Those are big, big things that many people are working on. But if we don't also focus on these smaller things, we're going to realize that we're not achieving our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals, our clean air goals, and we're going to wonder why. We're going to say, well, look at all we've done with electric cars and renewable energy on the grid and so on. It's going to be because of the increase in demand for fuels in small generators that are highly polluting. So really great. Give him another round of applause. Thank you, Tak. Arnold Schwarzenegger, in many of his motivational speeches, he says you have to abandon the word impossible. You have to ban it from your vocabulary. And somebody who's been doing that for many years is Alex Spadaru at the Adept Group. Raise your hand, Alex. You've already been recognized, but I want people to know who you are. He's a professor at UCLA and so much more. He's not speaking today, so I'm not even going to go into his bio, but you can Google him. And he's one of these guys that does not know the word impossible. It may just never have been mentioned to him, even as a kid. So when you bring an idea to Alex, no matter how crazy, he goes, oh yeah, we can do that. And then he turns to his students. And maybe that's the reason he bans the word impossible from his vocabulary, because he's got very bright students and colleagues at the Adept Group, including Liam Hurley, who we're going to introduce now. Liam was at SpaceX, and he introduced multiple new products for launch vehicles and satellites and spacecraft as a design engineer, a project manager, and supporting the launch and production of numerous electromechanical and fluid system components into space. And now at the Adept Group, he serves as Vice President of Engineering, focusing his energies on challenges in renewables and sustainable energy. Again, many of these challenges that we all would think are impossible, but thanks to Alex and his mindset and Liam's, nothing's impossible. He's developed hydrogen technology projects, often as part of microgrids in and around Southern California, has a broad perspective on hydrogen technologies, the strengths, the weaknesses, the safety considerations, which I know a lot of people are concerned about, and the beneficial impacts on air quality and climate change, especially in mass transit and the maritime industry. And after he gives his presentation, we'll have a little time for Q&A for both Tak and Liam. But let's welcome now Liam to the stage.
Thank you very much, Terry, for that introduction. And thank you, Tak, for speaking. I'm very excited to be up here talking after you. It was a pleasure and a privilege to work with you on the cart, and I can't wait to eat the first homemade sushi from the cart in the next few weeks. So looking forward to that. And I just want to say also, it was a total accident that both of us wore a purple paisley shirt today to present. So that was not planned. We didn't have time to change. So anyway, I'll get into my presentation here. I don't have any awesome montages, unfortunately, so only talk at those. But I've got 5 key truths here, things to keep in mind as you follow the hydrogen economy developing over the course of the next decade. So go ahead and get into it. So in this first key truth here is that this coming decade is the critical period for hydrogen. And around the world, governments and investors are putting tons of effort and funding into hydrogen. And so in the US, for example, the Department of Energy has invested $7 billion in 7 hydrogen hubs across the country. One of those is Arches in California. And that essentially means it's starting next year, essentially, this funding is going to be building projects across the country that are building new clean hydrogen technologies, the production of hydrogen, and new end uses. I guess the key takeaway here is that this is a dynamic environment, and not everything that we try is going to stick, but some of it will, some of it won't, and this is moving. This is a moving target. The numbers on this slide here, about 1,000 new projects announced as of the start of 2023, and over $300 billion invested in hydrogen at that time. Those numbers are snapshots. They're huge, but it's a moving target, and this is going to be changing over the course of the decade. So you're good. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, I think the clicker is working. So the second key point I want to make is that hydrogen is being looked at as a new energy source, and it's a replacement for the incumbent, which is diesel. Diesel is a huge source of energy for a majority of heavy industry uses across the world. Why is hydrogen being considered as the new alternative? There are two huge benefits. There are air pollution benefits, which help reduce health issues in the communities where these heavy industries are, right around the port. And so you can see here, the fuel cell, when hydrogen is used in a fuel cell, you have 0 criteria pollutants that are emitted at the point source. And this means that you can prevent cancer, asthma, all kinds of known and severe health conditions that come from operating diesel equipment around. That is one key benefit of hydrogen. And there's a second aspect that hydrogen helps with, which is greenhouse gas emissions. As we all know, climate change is a huge issue that needs to be addressed. And here it's a little more nuanced. Hydrogen can be made in a lot of different ways. You've heard probably of the colors of hydrogen, gray hydrogen and green hydrogen. And depending on where you get the hydrogen, it may or may not actually have an improving effect on greenhouse gas emissions. But here in the Los Angeles basin and at the Port of LA, if you replace a piece of diesel equipment with a hydrogen fuel cell that is running on roughly a 55% gray, 45% green hydrogen mix, you have now reached equivalency with just using electricity from the grid, from the LADWP grid. So the takeaway here is watch out for where the hydrogen comes from when you're considering the impact on climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. Thank you, Tak. So here shows a few of the main ways that hydrogen are made. And this chart on the right side of the screen there shows how far we have to go in terms of building up the infrastructure to produce clean hydrogen, this green hydrogen. Currently, the vast majority of hydrogen in the world is made from fossil fuels. Only about 4% of the hydrogen in the world is made using electrolysis, which is what Terry described earlier, splitting water apart to take the hydrogen using electricity. One key point to watch, though, is it depends, electricity also doesn't grow on trees. You have to watch where the electricity comes from. And only 1 to 2% of total hydrogen production today comes from hydrogen that was made using renewable electricity in electrolysis. And that's why this massive investment in hydrogen that's currently happening is so key to build the new technologies and large production centers and small that will produce green hydrogen to fuel this future. You'll also hear about other kind of smaller startup in the lab ways to make hydrogen. There's turquoise hydrogen, for example. It's not commercial yet, but actually at UCLA, there's a lab working on this. Uses heat to break methane apart. And typically when you use methane to make hydrogen, the carbon in the methane leaves as CO2 and goes in the atmosphere and contributes to climate change. With turquoise hydrogen, the carbon in the methane is collected and becomes graphene, which is a useful material. And so that's just one of a lot of other methods that are being looked into. But the main two are right there, electrolysis and then steam methane reforming, which I should have mentioned initially, but that is the vast majority of the hydrogen we get. That's the fossil fuel-based hydrogen. There's one other source of hydrogen, there we go, that I do want to talk about, and I'm calling it nuclear fusion's shy cousin here, because I think that the potential of this kind of hydrogen is as big for the future of energy in the world as is nuclear fusion, but it's a little bit less talked about. And so this is white hydrogen, or geologic hydrogen, which is completely different from all the other sources of hydrogen that you'll hear talked about. That's because white hydrogen is not an energy carrier, it is a primary energy source. So all these other forms of hydrogen, green, gray, you start with electricity, or you start with methane, which is already a source of energy, and you convert it to hydrogen for future use. White hydrogen is hydrogen that just comes out of the ground, like other fossil fuels. But in this case, it's a green, zero emissions fuel. And so over the course of history, people have found hydrogen coming out of the ground. There is, in Australia, there's a lot of investment right now, including there's a company, Gold Hydrogen is one of the most well-known, that is looking into geologic hydrogen, and they found it in the early 20th century. In Mali, there's actually a small village that runs entirely on white hydrogen that comes out of the ground and was discovered in the late 80s when an unlucky cigarette smoker flicked their butt and caught a flame. And most recently, there's an example in 2023, last year, in the north of France. There was a huge, potentially huge deposit of hydrogen found, and it's currently being investigated. The takeaway here is We don't know whether or not this will be world-changing, but it absolutely has the potential to be, and it could, estimates are hard to make here, but it's potentially could be hundreds of years of clean energy for everything that we do if white hydrogen really comes to fruition. So something to keep your eyes out for. And the last point I want to talk about is just to give an example of what hydrogen looks like when it's actually applied in the maritime industry. So a couple weeks ago, I was up in San Francisco and I visited the Sea Change, which switched maritime, and I know they've been to Altasea a number of times as well. I think they actually have a diorama or a diagram of their ship over on that end of the warehouse. But visited the ship there, and I wanted to just show a picture of this sleek-looking vessel and point out some of the unique qualities of a hydrogen-powered vessel compared to other ones. So you can see here, there are long hydrogen tanks that have to go on top of the ship because hydrogen is a light gas, and so when it leaks, you have to, flammability concerns, you have to put it on top of the ship so that when the gas comes, if there's a leak or if you have to vent, the gas goes up. So on hydrogen ships, you'll see the tanks on top, which is unique. You'll also see the tall, very unique vent stack coming out of the back there, like a tail sticking up. That's also because of the light nature of hydrogen gas. And for safety reasons, you have to have these tall stacks sticking out the back. And this is kind of a list of the other components. In the engine room of a hydrogen-powered ship, you'll have a big air intake, like on your car. You'll have your fuel cells. You'll have battery packs, which you still need in hydrogen-powered vehicles. And in this case, they're lithium-ion batteries on the Sea Change. What am I forgetting? The other thing I mentioned on here is sensors and alarms. So there are different ways that you need to watch out for hydrogen leaks or flames if they were to occur, because hydrogen flames are invisible. And so you need special detection equipment when you have hydrogen on board. So this is one ship. It's not the only one. Around the world, there are a lot of examples of first-of-their-kind hydrogen-powered vessels coming to the maritime industry. And here are just some examples, the different shapes and sizes of ferries, assist boats, water taxis, tugboats. And so this is just to show that it's really happening, and it's going to be happening here in the Port of Los Angeles. And, hopefully we all get to ride on one of these pretty soon. So that was my presentation. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Liam. We now have an answer to that age-old question: how many PhDs does it take to advance a PowerPoint? And the answer is 2. Well, speaking of those 2, we have just a few minutes left for some Q&A. If you've got some questions for either Tak or Liam, feel free. Yes, right in the back there.
Thank you. I was looking at all the different color stages for hydrogen. My question is, why are we now looking at carbon intensity rather than color coding the hydrogen by the way it's produced? Because if you start digging into this, it's kind of ludicrous. I'm looking at my electric car that I got out there. For me to be able to reach 0 carbon intensity from its point of production and how much diesel was used to dig up the ground and everything else, I'm going to be 12 years into it before I can honestly say I've reached 0 emissions. Because carbon intensity of how we produce energy has to be part of the equation. The electricity, everything we use, because I think that's where we're failing in looking at all of this. You can't just look at it single-handedly. We have to start moving toward carbon intensity rather than just color coding things and keeping it at a kindergarten level, because we're all much beyond that now, at least I'm assuming.
Yeah, could not agree more. Absolutely. The colors can mask what's actually going on, and looking at the carbon intensity of your hydrogen when you want to assess the potential benefits for climate change is what you must do. Absolutely.
So let me add. The actual situation is exactly what you mentioned was already recognized, and lots of the group like Hydrogen Fuel Cell Partnership and other hydrogen group in this United States are start moving from color to the carbon intensity discussion. So there will be a no more color soon.
Terrific. I got a question right.
Just one more question.
Could we just in the interest of fairness, could we have a few other voices, and then the guys will be here. The guys will be here to answer other questions. Just in the interest of time, though, let's.
Could you define carbon intensity, just so I'm sure I know what you mean?
So the carbon intensity of hydrogen is essentially measured in how much carbon dioxide equivalent is emitted per kilogram of hydrogen that's produced. So I could actually go back. There's a plot that hopefully you can see. These different bars show the y-axis here is carbon intensity. And for pure gray hydrogen, you can see it's a pretty tall bar. And that's because there's a wide range of carbon intensities even within that given color. And so you have to consider that within a color, you might be making 10 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per kilogram hydrogen, or you might be making 6, but it could be considered the same color. So absolutely need to look at the carbon intensity numbers if you really want to get to the truth.
Great. Other questions? All right. Well, look, the guys will be around to answer more questions. Talk will be over at the sushi cart, demonstrating it where you can see it. Let's give them a great big round of applause. And once again, a reminder, we've got about 30 minutes left on the auction. If you have any questions about how to get on that on your phone, ask anybody in a blue shirt, or Jenny or Robin will be happy to answer. Don't forget, you can join up Altasea and get this cool cap or other great swag. Just see Natasha at the entry there at the registration desk. And please join us. We are a nonprofit. We need your help. And remember, our future is blue. Thank you for coming.